set the world on fire, fire. mind, hold me steady, yeah. 'Cause you want me, you won't let me go. So I burn slow. I can see you coming like a wildfire. I'm just a fuel, baby, you're the lighter. If I'm not careful, you'll burn right through my soul. Burning like a wildfire. Careful, you'll burn right through my soul. Burning like a wildfire. Dynamizer. I can feel you coming like a wildfire. I'm just the fuel, baby, you're the lighter. If I'm not careful, you'll burn right through my soul. Burning like a wildfire. Dynamizer.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the PUBG Mobile PMES France Community Finals Day 2. We're coming at you with 5 more rounds of intense PUBG Mobile esports action today, and honestly, 20 teams bringing their very best, duking it out for their shot to advance on to the PMES Play-Ins. Now, as we all know, this is going to be your ticket to the PMSL, and obviously, transitively, to the PMGC, if all goes well, fingers crossed. But it all starts here. This is the first step up the ladder, and these teams have been giving absolute warfare the past day. The first 5 games have given us, honestly, if anything, the variable of unpredictability. No one team won twice, so everything is all out on the table. Anything can happen today. Let's kick things off. Round 1 of 5. Let's get it. All right. Apparently, not quite. So anyways, apologies for that. Apparently, 1 minute early is not going to be the thing there. But we have got 5 more rounds to go today, as well as the day 3 tomorrow. Now, if day 1 is to tell us anything, it's going to be that Rafa Esports, teams like Rafa, Shockwave, TBSS are really setting the tone for day 1, starting that snowball in turning it into a boulder. But if teams like Asteria and Ocean on Fire can continue this sort of bounce back, regain some of the slack in the rope that may have been initiated in the first few matches yesterday, if the last half of yesterday is any sort of indicator, I think we have a pretty good shot at seeing some of those tides change here. But now I'm certainly hopeful that we are dropping off the plane and ready to go here. Production team, what do we say? Are we off the plane? Cool. Yes, let's get it. Round 1 of 5 of the PMES France Community Finals Day 2 kicks off now. With 8 more seconds. You tricked me again, production. Let's get it. The very first match of the day. I know no one else can hear the production talking in right now, but they are laughing at me so hard. All right, so here we go. Match 1 of 5. Day 2, kicking things off with the very first map ever introduced to the game. Of course, we're talking about Erangel. This is the map that our participants are by far most familiarized with, most comfortable with, most rehearsed on, and should feel most in their element with. Kind of the easiest start for the day possible for them. But let's see what sort of flight path they got. You know, if it's not an all-together centralized flight path, we could be left with a bit more of a hesitant start. But you know what I always say, ladies and gentlemen, is a more passive early game will always directly translate to a more action-packed and climactic mid or in-game. All right, well, there it is. There's the flight path as we see it, a very centralized path here, giving our participants basically nothing but options to choose from here. That could be a little complicated in terms of a more passive early game, but here we actually are already seeing it. There seems to be some early game confrontation in the southern portion of the map, down towards the military base island, where TBSS is facing off with who? Potentially Ritzy? All right, well, catching wind of further up north, we have another potential altercation between the likes of Celestial and, oh, pardon me, that's not Celestial. We got Fanatics here alongside KR. Okay. A little bit of a waiting game here. As you can see, a battle of patience is pretty understandable. This early on, none of these participants are very properly looted, just trying to get a little bit of armor, a little bit of ammo, maybe some meds, just to find some cushioning, some stability there before they engage in these early altercations. But as we know to be the nature of PUBG Mobile esports, that's preference, and sometimes you're kind of just thrown into the thick of it from the get-go. And that extra couple minutes is not always an opportunity afforded to them. And there we see it, Asteria going after GUF in the distance. Now, Asteria and GUF, two high-performing teams on day one, so definitely going to be a critical factor if they are knocked off their high horse this early on in day two. Yep, catching wind here on CKRS, a bit of a slower start for them, but understandably so. CKRS entering the day right about halfway in the overall bracket board, just about the 10th place mark. So certainly not the worst performing team by any means on day one, but a lot of improvement to be made here coming into day two. And I think they know it. They are not ready to make any sudden impulsive decisions here. Everything must be cold and calculated here up against a spread out team of Fnatic Esports. Coco biding his or her time here with that QBZ S18 combo. Not even a vest to their name here. Certainly underlooted in terms of armor, and finding themselves at a weakened standpoint, just swimming in a ocean of Fnatic opposition. But some utilities being thrown outward, some warning utilities from CKRS, not really hitting any marks. And here we see Pashta, the enemy on the roof, keeping the overwatch and scouting detail. And what a beautifully placed shot there onto Coco from Fnatic's Dennis. Pashta not ready to use this opportunity to push, and understandably so. To do so impulsively here would almost mean a certain retaliatory knock. Hade playing the slow game here. Properly looted here. He's got himself decent amounts of armor. He got that 53 round clip in the 9mm Bison with a Scar L for his primary. And edging forward towards the opposition here. All the while, GUF and Asteria face off in the distance. And down goes Goat and Quaco at the hands of Bronx Flank. Dennis, 3x M4 in hand, putting a hurting onto Coco. Coco brought back to life by her fallen teammates there, but Dennis just on a relentless warpath, making the nades rain hellfire, keeping the pressure factor onto CKRS. And Pashta putting an extra hurting in. Dennis with that sliver through the window, getting the final touch to bring the enemy down to the prone zone and knock him out of the equation. And this is going to spell a lot of trouble here for the likes of CKRS. With Kite down. Oh, Kaz desperately trying to reunite with his fallen teammate, but swallowing a hefty load of bullet damage in the process. Dennis knocked as well from retaliation. Coco brought back to life once again here. Pashta, S18 in hand. A shotgun sounds the same in every language, and it just says goodbye. All right, well, that is a healthy start here for Fnatic Esports. Finding themselves sitting on a healthy start here of elims early on in the game. That's a nice little nest egg to start the game off with, and maybe even dial things back a little bit to secure those late game placement points. But Fnatic, you know, a team that entered the day here, I believe, probably around 7th or 8th position overall. Still quite a bit of ground to make up today, especially if they want to come in tomorrow with a fairly rational start. Let's say entering the finals with a fair fight at getting that first place positioning, securing that slot in the PMES community play-ins. Now, we still are sitting here with Fnatic, but Fnatic sort of thrown out of the frying pan and into the fire, as they are now dealing with a full 4-piece enemy team of Far Voice Gaming. Far Voice, one of the critically dangerous teams throughout the entirety of this event thus far, really leading the semifinals and taking a pretty hefty start here on day one, entering day two at, I believe, 3rd place position overall and only 5 points behind second. Far Voice is a team that's comfortable in their close quarter combat, altercations. They're comfortable being aggressive, and they also have the patience to be reserved when needed. But as I say it, they're facing off with none other than what remains of Fnatic, and there it is. Pashta turned into a little bowling pin, and Minus is the bowling ball. It's a strike right there and then. All right. Well, little bits of downtime here as we are finding ourselves down to 14 teams spread across 54 players, and still plenty of time to go here. We're not even at the concluding portions of stage 2 yet. So enemies are dwindling down here a little bit faster than we saw on day 1. A little bit to be expected here. As you can see, kind of the nature of these high-level events when there's a lot riding on the line. Those day 1s can be sort of just dipping your toes in the water, seeing how everyone else is playing. But day 2, hitting the ground, running a little bit faster. We got Bat Squad here up against none other than the Tribe Boys. And it looks to be a knock on Tribe. Zero, Poison, Zayo, and Ninja are going to be swarming upon the opposition. Hater trying to make a stand here, cooking up a preliminary nade. We got Touch taking the bait. A little bit of tunnel vision, and Bat Squad's 077K is not going to allow it. That little line of sight was all he needed. And down goes Hater. This is turning into a world of hurt for Tribe Esports as they find themselves reliant upon their final hope here. Accelerate, finding a false sense of comfort in that tiny shack. Those 4 walls always given that false sense of security, and honestly, it's like a fish that jumps himself into a water barrel, asking for the elimination. All right. Now, in just those brief 2 minutes, we're down 1 more team, 4 more players eliminated. This is a much faster-paced Erangel match than we were met with yesterday. And Bat Esports, let's give them credit where credit is due. Really setting the tone here, changing up their pace from yesterday, and a lot more committed to these pushes. Now, my goodness, this zone shift is making a lot of participants kick their feet. You can see GRX positioning themselves for a potential bridge camp and maybe even a gatekeep opportunity against the likes of TBSS. But this is certainly going to be a pressure factor as that Riverway taking up even more real estate and dividing the play zone into 2 sections. Ritzy Esports, a team that was just in full effect in the semifinal stages, entering the day a little bit weaker than we would have predicted, having a tough day 1, but really sort of rounding out towards the end of the day, entering today at about 9th place overall, but still very much in the equation, only 4 points behind Fnatic, who holds 8. They're still hungry for this comeback, and today is the day to do it. Ocean's on Fire, a team who has really shown what a comeback can look like in a brief few matches. Ocean's on Fire had we'll call it a sporadic day 1, meaning they had some chicken dinners, phenomenal performances, followed by being eliminated immediately the following match, but nonetheless, their performances overall so strong that they've been able to maintain a fairly high positioning, 7th place overall, in spite of some early game eliminations. Nameless getting a line on Bat Squad, but not able to get any really connecting damage there, at least not enough to secure a knock. Poison able to heal himself right on back up, and they're going to move on. Ladies and gentlemen, we are reaching the very concluding seconds of Stage 3 as Stage 4 approaches, which we know to be the nature of PUBG Mobile Esports. That zone is going to shrink, that zone is going to hurt more, and our players are going to have less and less real estate to choose from. They are going to be thrown into the thick of it, and whether they are comfortable taking these fights on or not, well, that little comfort variable is going to be thrown out the window the more this match progresses. We got a line on Rafa Esports and Kokuri's Logic. Logic getting a beautiful knock there with that 4x M4. And talk about a team that really has set the tone in day one. Rafa Esports, by all means, just an outlier performing team. All-out Berserker Warpath, hungry for the action, hungry for the kills, and very comfortable in those aggressive confrontations. Now, just to paint the scene for you here, ladies and gentlemen, Rafa Esports entered day two with literally 70 points. In second place, we had Shockwave at 46. So that means literally a 24-point differential between first and second place. Second place holding 46 points. Rafa Esports has over a half of Shockwave's total point lead over Shockwave. This is going to be one of those very critical days for not just Rafa Esports, but for the rest of the playing field, because if you're studying those overall scores, you're going to say to yourself, hey, if Rafa has another day like they had on day one, this could very quickly become an outlier performance that cannot be regained. If Rafa is able to maintain the momentum that they built on day one, if they're able to get several more chicken dinners or just those high elim, high placement point gains, this could very well be a battle for silver, a battle for second place. And none of these teams want to have their hopes thwarted this early on, especially when only a couple slots, I believe it's only two slots that move on to the PMES Play-Ins. So this is going to be a very critical factor here on day two. How Rafa performs could affect the entirety of this whole event on day two. Getting eyes on GRX, you know, GRX definitely had a rough go of it on day one. There's just not a lot of question of it, but to find themselves this close in proximity to not just Far Voice, but TBSS as well, that's being stuck in between a rock and a hard place. Two extremely high-performing teams on day one. Speaking of high-performing teams, Games United Force, just one of the most comfortably aggressive on day one and showing that they have not changed that pace. If the formula ain't broke, don't fix it, they say. And they are coming in guns a-blazing, playing highly aggressive here in these later stages of round one. There it is, Unknown and Pape surviving by the hair on their chin as that vehicle just swallows the bullet damage and becomes a smoking candle. But getting a little bit of space there, and now you can see Pape of Oceans Under Fire slithering forward on that belly, trying to get a nade knock out of what remains of Rafa. At this point, Wipe playing medic duty, trying to secure a revive on his fallen teammate Keme, all the while Kukuri facing off in a distance altercation with none other than Mindset. And look at that beautiful knock there. Plaque Boy taking out CVNT. M4, beautiful distance knock. And this is going to be interesting to see how Kukuri responds to this knock. Are they going to push or hold position? Because if they're holding position at this point, I don't see that being a good use of their resources if they're not willing to engage on the thirst. And I'm not disagreeing with it per se. All the while, GUF just continuing this absolute onslaught, now focusing their attention on Vexy of Celestial Esports. Tuning into Capazino. Wow, GUF engaging their attention on multiple teams at the same time. As you can see, Capazino with eyes on Nameless Esports. Gentlemen holding position a decent ways away, actually a bit closer to Oceans Under Fire. As you can see, that knock on Pape is, it's just baiting Wipe. Wipe trying to secure a thirst with a frag grenade. Will he be able to place that just perfectly so? Probably not from that distance, but with Seiko of Far Voice Gaming off in the distance, scouting the positions of Kukuri and Mindset, a lot of in-game action awaits us here. And, ooh, the Oceans have run dry at the hands of Kenna77K. A beautifully placed frag grenade, spelling the end of Oceans Under Fire for round one. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a shame for Oceans because, as you can see, there are still 10 teams remaining spread across 31 players, meaning that Oceans did not quite meet the mark for that placement bracket points gain. And with only one elim to their name, it's going to be a shabby 1-point gain for them for round one. Definitely not the start they were hoping for. Well, Far Voice, strong as ever. Full 4-person team. 5 elims already to their name, a great scouting angle on the positions of Kokuri and Mindset, maybe even on TBSS. As you can see, Far Voice in a beautiful 2-2 split, and if ever there was a team that I think should feel comfortable in a 2-2 split, it would be either Far Voice or GUF. I mean, just two teams who have been absolutely phenomenal in their aggressive pushes, as well disciplined in their patience and ability to wait things out when they need to be. Getting eyes on Tornado of TBSS, a little uncomfortably distant from his team. They're not very far, but they're far enough that I think it would be a problem to try to secure a revive on him if Tornado is knocked. Trying to make the most of those utilities and shrouding themselves in what smoke cover they can. But keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, as we approach this final in-game zones here, those utilities, those smokes could be the crucial difference maker between a first place finish and a third place. Every utility can be a absolute clutch difference maker in a heads-up in-game zone. So they're going to need to be very selective on how they use this. And as you can see, Tornado using one of his 2 final smoke grenades left. This is a bit of a panic factor for both TBSS and Far Voice, finding themselves just on the outskirts outside of this new zone shift. But problematically enough, they've got the Bat Squad on the inside of the zone edge with a potential gatekeeping opportunity. We got a water snake here in Celestial Esports' Goose. The Tornado has hit onto Alex of Far Voice Gaming and caused a heap of destruction, but boy, oh boy, Far Voice retaliates quickly before a third-party inbound from TBSS. Seiko just laying an onslaught of hellfire with these frag grenades. A 7.62 LMG MG3 in hand alongside an M4. He is looking properly equipped here. However, that caster curse is all too real. And boy, Tryout, I don't know if his name is Tryout because this is a tryout, but if so, welcome to the team, because that was a beautiful clutch nade right there. Way to carry the name on for the team, gain those extra placement points, plus 1 extra elim point. At this point, we have reached the bubble of placement points, meaning every position, every team that you survive longer than now is an extra couple placement points. So at this point, you know, if you're a solo like Celestial's Goose, you're weighing your options. Even if you have a knocked third-party elim steal opportunity right in front of you, it might not be the best move, considering if you just stay alive for 30 more seconds, you might outlive 2 more teams and gain even more points. As a solo, you have to weigh what you can objectively do, weigh the risk versus reward, and, you know, if you are just approaching it cold and calculated, then the placement approach would make a lot of sense. Well, if anything can be credited to Ritzy, it's that they know how to stay alive in an in-game, keeping all 4 players up here. But on top of that, they've got prime positioning against the solo in Celestial Esports. And look here, Kokuri, we've got a desperate times call for desperate measures strategy. I don't know what he's doing. Kokuri's Oman just heading far away from his team and diving headfirst into the shallow waters of Ritzy Esports. And boy, it looks like he bumped his head real quick. Speaking of Kokuri, it was down to Blackboy, who had to play a quick position shift and start turning into medic. And now Bat Squad cooking up some nades and then getting some easy secured finishes on Ritzy. Unfortunately, it looks like Ritzy was downed from Crispy down from his teammate Rayhan's frag grenade. That is definitely going to be a rough locker room pep talk after match one. You can bet that there's going to be some name calling and some strategy shifting, maybe even some subs. But GUF Capizino aiming in, trying to get a overwatch on this GUF Rafa altercation. Gentlemen, using these tiny four walls, which I keep condemning, these shacks, which I keep saying end up being a team's undoing, can also be a team's saving grace. And gentlemen, really making the most of it as he can. And boy, if ever there was a team you did not want to make it to these in-game zones, it's Rafa Esports, who has just laid an onslaught of points in this last 5 matches of the PMES France Community Finals. I should say last 6 matches. This match is no exception. As you can see, Rafa is still very, very much in the equation. They're not relying solely upon Gentlemen. They've got several other teammates up and about. This looks to be a 2-1 split, an opportunity for scouting and relaying critical information here. Look at this. Gentleman not taking the bait for a single second. He knows that the opposition is just on the other side. Just one moment, ladies and gentlemen. Looks like we may have had a little bit of feed interruption here. Let me see if I can turn it off and back on. Nope. We seem to be at a little bit of an issue here. Hold on, guys. All right, ladies and gentlemen, hang tight. We're going to just be resolving these issues as best as we can. We'll be back at you in just a few short moments. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back up and about. Apologies for the technical hurdles, but as you know to be the nature of esports, technical hurdles are part of the name of the game, but we are back in action here, and look at this. GUF, Game United Force Capizino, still in the equation as a solo. The team itself is looking strong. 12 elims and up to the top 4 placement bracket. No matter what, Capizino has carried this to the end game and secured a lot of extra points. And this is a team that is absolutely to be feared. Games United Force easily in the top 3 or 4 placements overall, and certainly a variable threat to the remainder of the playing field. And here you see it. Even as a solo, Capizino is catching 4Blue's attention, and it looks like he is going to be a focal point here, brought down to about 20% of his overall health. That vehicle that he had as his little traveling migration I guess you could say, assistant is now going to be a ticking time bomb and potentially his only cover from further bullet fire moving forward. Now look at this spread, ladies and gentlemen. We have got 3 teams remaining, but it is a 3v3v1. So between Ritzy and Rafa, we've got a fair fight, assuming Rafa can secure this revive before the inevitable push from Ritzy Esports. Preliminary nades being thrown out by Midoma. Capizino just trying his best to lay low, lay under the radar, let these numbers dwindle. Just one more team eliminated, and it's extra free placement points for him and his team. And remember what I said, that vehicle, which was supposed to be his ride into the new zone, ended up being one of his only positions of cover from bullet fire from Ritzy's 4 Blue. That just goes to exemplify the importance of preparation for an in-game zone in PUBG Mobile Esports. You know, when compound cover becomes few and far between, that's when it really comes down to knowing the hills, the divots, knowing, you know, when to save your smokes, your frag grenades, knowing when to shoot your vehicle up to explosion and using it for cover. It's all boiling down to experience, and as we are very, very well into 7 years of PUBG Mobile Esports, I think it's safe to say that these players and participants have this map and the nature of this Erangel strategy memorized like the back of their hand. All right, a little bit of the waiting game. All right, there we have it. Beautifully done. Beautifully done by all means. Ritzy Esports kicking off day 2 with a absolute momentum changer. Ritzy, one of the highest performing teams in the semi-qualifiers, really coming in with patience and discipline in game 1 of day 2. Just a battle of patience between themselves and Rafa. And Rafa, you know, a team that's so hyper aggressive and good at being hyper aggressive. You can understand their rationale behind this open split. You know, it's a team that has really met very little struggle in these strategies because they are so comfortable, not just in their group confrontations, but their solo confrontations as well. But Ritzy not compromising or giving up an inch. They had the advantage of compound cover and high ground from that second story. It was just from start to finish, that entire stage 8 zone was basically controlled by Ritzy Esports, and a well-deserved chicken dinner to start the day off. Look at this spread, the 2-1 split. Capizino is supposed to be the outlying scout performer, maybe getting that off angle, but unfortunately, as we've seen time and time again, that beach coast it just makes you stick out like a sore thumb. And that 2-1 split, which was supposed to add the panic factor on Ritzy, was more like picking Capizino out of a barrel, just immediately in the line of fire. But regardless, nothing can be taken away from Ritzy Esports. You know, entering the day before round 1, I believe in the top 5 or 6 placement overall, strong performing from start to finish, but this was the critical change of pace that they needed, really stepping back to what was working in the semifinals, knowing how to change that strategy from the patient to the hyper aggressive, I should say, and knowing when to switch back. It's all coming down to experience, synergy, and boy, Ritzy Esports exemplified all of these beautifully. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is just one round of the day down, done, and dusted. We still have four more matches of PUBG Mobile action to work our way through today. Now, that is just the very first map ever of Erangel, but that is by far the map that our participants are supposed to be most comfortable with, most familiarized with. But what is going to happen when we change up the geography a bit as we move forward into round 2 of the PUBG Mobile PMES Community Finals France Day 2. Stick around, we'll be back soon.
And I'm not negative, just realistic. I'm not a pessimist, I'm indifferent. Oh dear. We never see it coming when we try. Love is blind. You can break the pattern, learn from your mistakes, focus on what matters, do whatever it takes. You can look for answers, you could even change, but if something isn't meant to be, then
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the overall results from match 1 of day 2. Look at this, a perfectly divided 12 points from Elims alone, not to mention the probably around 10 points of placement gain for Ritzy Esports. But look at this, every member, Crispy, Midoma, 4Blue, and Rehan, equally pulling their weight with an even 3 kills per person. Everyone eats a little bite of chicken today when you're on Ritzy Esports. And let's not take credit away from the likes of Games United Force. Games United Force showing a phenomenal effort here. Ain't nothing wrong with the silver second place finish, especially if you're doing it with 12 elims to your name. That's only 2 or 3 points less of a point gain than Ritzy Esports got themselves. Now, talk about a team you don't want to be getting in the top 3. Well, tough. Rafa Esports has it like that, and yes, it is a top 3 finish for them as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, stick around. We'll be back at you in just a couple of minutes with round 205 of the PUBG Mobile Esports Community Series France Finals Day 2. Be back soon. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back with round 2 of 5 of the PUBG Mobile Community Series Finals for France, day 2, and you already know what time it is. We started things off with the first map of Erangel before moving on over a little migration to a new geography. Of course, I'm talking a little destruction in the desert, the wide open desert landscape of Miramar. Let's get it. Round 2 of 5 begins now. And, well, if there was ever a little bit of similarity between round 1 and 2, it is that these participants are graced with a almost perfectly central flight path, meaning nothing but options to choose from in terms of landing points. Now, what does that mean for us, the viewer? Well, it could mean a slower start to the match, just due to the sheer size of Miramar being this wide open 8x8 geography. It could leave a bit of a slower first half of the match, but as I said in round 1, it'll pertain to round 2 if that is the case. If we do get a slower start, it only is going to mean a more action-packed and climactic in-game. So that's worth the trade if you ask me. We are seeing some serious congestion here at the very start of the match. I'm talking about the northern region of this first zone in the San Martin, Hacienda del Patron region, where Farvoice, Kukuri, GRX, Ritzy, as well as OG Esports seem to be congregating. But as I said in yesterday's Miramar match, the way a friend of mine has described the Miramar map assessment, it's like looking at your rear view mirror when you're driving on a interstate. Objects may appear closer or further away than they seem, but Mindset is here with the Tribe. Tribe with a very, very rough first match of the day, and now potentially a little bit of repetition here, but maybe not, as they take out Sano and S2RR of Mindset, and this could be the change in the tides. The start they needed to round 2 to build that confidence and start regaining that momentum that they may have lost in round 1. But unfortunately, a little evening of the odds at the hands of Jin 666 of Mindset with the Uzi. Oh my goodness. And look at his secondary, only a Winchester aside from this 9mm SMG with no extended mag. He's got no helmet, but he is able to try to secure this revive on his fallen teammate Sano. This may be boiling down to a bit of indecision on the end of Tribe, but we are thrown into the thick of it here, where Farvoice is bullying the likes of Kukuri Esports, and here we see it minus one of the heaviest hitters of the team approaching with a gun combo that he found out of necessity, not preference. He is rocking himself an SKS and single tapping that 7.62 sniper DMR. He's just tapping away with that little heart out, trying to get the finish on Oman, or maybe even a knock on Techie. At least taking a tire or two out of the equation. All the while, his teammate keeping the pressure factor on Techie and the remainder of Kukuri. As you can see, Plaque Boy very low on health and no meds to speak of in that regard. And Techie is downed. This is and also in the feed we are seeing Rafa and Asteria facing off. This is a much more action-packed early game altercation than yesterday's Miramar as well. Today, our participants are much less hesitant, really hitting the ground running today, and I love to see it. We got Alex of Farvoice playing scouting duty here for his team. And again, remember what I said last game. If there are ever, a few teams that I would feel comfortable in these 2-2, 3-1, 1-1-1-1 splits, it's going to be Farvoice and, GUF. Just two teams who have exemplified beautiful aggressive tactics and just fully confident in their pushes. So that is a very formidable threat to see this early on. Rafa already in fairly centralized position in this new zone, but swimming in a pool of opposition with a potential for a third party from Ritzy. Catching eyes on Celestial Esports as we got Vexy here. Not ideally equipped, running two SMGs, the Uzi UMP-45 with just a level 1 helmet, but hey, it's still early enough on. And looks like the Bat Squad has had some early game action and came out victorious with 4 elims already to their name. 3 of those elims go to Poison. Now, I saw in the chat yesterday a lot of hype for the Bat Squad's Poison. Wonder if he can live up to that hype today. It looks like with those 3 elims, like maybe he can. But catching eyes on Rafa, this could be huge. If Kenny is eliminated, well, I'm sorry, but the GOAT has fallen, and this is just going to exemplify it. Rafa, just every last member of their team is a star performer. Every last one of them is an absolute barbarian on the battlefield, and Kenny 77K coming through with the clutch with that S12 finish, a shotgun finish to just even the odds and regain his teammates back. 4 elims to their name, and Rafa carries on as a 3-person team. Yeah, this is a bad news situation for the rest of the playing field. The last thing you want is the outlying performing team to get even more points and carry on with the numbers to back up potentially a round 2 chicken dinner or a top 3 finish. All right, Ritzy Esports, if anything can be said, is that they are coming in cold, calculated, and prepared today. Well, all the mistakes maybe made in day 1 for Ritzy Esports have been studied. They've gone, reviewed the tape, had their locker room pep talks, and maybe had their little practice sessions because they came in hitting round 1 of day 2 just running in full form. And I'm not one bit concerned by the 0 elims that I see thus far because it's Miramar. And as we say, those elims can come in the last 2 zones if need be, but securing those placement points could be the critical differential factor here in closing that gap with Rafa Esports. All right, well, catching eyes on Tornado and Danzo of TBSS just hunting around, trying to get properly looted and maybe scouting any enemy locations that they find. Ocean's under fire, you know, a team who really was thriving on day 1 in the second half of the day, the last 3 matches in particular, but finding themselves just short of that placement bracket marker in round 1, really trying to regain that slack in the rope here. Cover the ground that they lost in round 1 here in round 2, but that is going to require a lot of discipline and self-control here. We got eyes on OG Esports. It's good to see OG Esports with 4 elims on the board, but as you can see, it did not come without a hefty price, losing half of their starting lineup in the process to get those 4 elims. And this is a team that really hasn't been they haven't been underperforming, but they haven't really had a lot of critical performing moments. No huge plays that we've seen so far, but you know, keeping a fairly steady pace. I believe 11th place overall. CKRS getting eyes on Celestial, and here we have it. Vexy with almost no health to speak of, just picked off with that final bullet, leaving leaving Celestial in a potential world of hurt here. Ritzy Esports closing the gap between themselves and Rafa. Now, this could be an altercation that changes the fate of the whole event, or at least undoing some of the progress that was furthered in round 1 by Rafa if Ritzy's able to make it happen. They are in hot pursuit of Rafa, but as you can see, are they in hot pursuit or are they the ones being picked apart? That vehicle was just maybe 1 or 2 bullets away from being a ticking time bomb. Fnatic catching a line on TBSS as we see Pachta, the M4 on the roof. The enemy you don't want with a potential line of sight through the window to secure that thirst if he's able to get the knock. All the while, Celestial and CKRS in a CQC battle. There's Ska making the most of an S12. And boy, oh boy, Juicy and Goose are down, and Celestial is sent back to the lobby. Oh, pardon me. Half their members sent back to the lobby there. And nope, I was correct. It just took it a little time to catch up. Celestial is down, done, and dusted for round 2. And that is going to be a rough one to come back from so early on. OG Esports and CKRS just swallowing a hefty cup of that blue zone juice. Just minimal damage right now as it's still stage 2, but if they wait too much longer, too many zones and stages later, that strategy is not going to be a realistic option for letting that clock settle out. And Ritzy just playing the slow game today in round 2 after a pretty strong round 1 chicken dinner finish. And if memory serves correct, I believe that the first 2 or 3 stages of game 1 today, Ritzy also had 0 elims, or at least very little. So I think this is probably a repeat of that, let's say, first half of the match discipline. You know, a little bit of reservation. Not going to lean into the word passive gameplay when it's so calculated and done so purposefully. So if that is correct, then I think we can expect right around stage 4 to see a change in the strategy for Ritzy Esports as they stretch their arms out, kind of spread their wings, and work their way into the more aggressive strategy that we saw at the end of round 1. And there's Fnatic working their way just a very short traveling distance into this new safe zone, but finding themselves in a potential danger zone here as they've got GUF on one side, and I believe I even saw members of Bat Squad northbound as well, so that could be positioning themselves in between a rock and a hard place. Looks like Farvoice and Rafa Esports are still squaring off. Farvoice is not letting their foot off the pedal. They have had a taste of Rafa blood, and Kenny, I hate to tell you, but they grew a little bit fond of that taste here, and they want the finish as Alex comes in with that S12 and quickly eliminating the Rafa opposition. There is still hope for Rafa Esports, and as we saw in round 1, if they've got one member up, they are just as formidable a threat as they ever were. One member of Rafa can do what 4 members of other teams can. That is a unfortunate fact for the playing field. There's not a bias, there's objective assessment, and that is just what we have seen. And Gentleman is very much a formidable threat to the remainder of the playing field, even on his own. But Farvoice, boy oh boy, talk about a critical difference maker for the event. If they are able to eliminate Rafa so early on, then for the remainder of this game, I would imagine if they are able to, that they are going to be a lot more aggressive for the remaining portions of round 2, out to make the most of this time without Rafa, trying to close that point gap between themselves and the first place Kings of the Hill here. That'll be the time to do it. Little congestion here between Mindset's Jin and members of Fnatic Esports. Now, Mindset, interesting enough to see them trying to engage on Fnatic when they are essentially outnumbered. It's down to just Sano and Jin here. They lost CVNT and S2RR fairly early on in the match. So, basically approaching from stage 1, knowing that they were at a handicap disadvantage here. So to engage on to engage on Fnatic when they have another opposition to their backside in GUF, it's a bold decision, to say the least. Well, Bronx, Blank, and Savage exercising patience in full form. Conte of Oceans Under Fire doing a little bit of the same. Now, as we said at the beginning of the match, Oceans Under Fire, this is a very important match for them, especially considering it wasn't even a poor performance in round 1. It was just, unfortunately, being eliminated just before the placement bracket marker and only doing so with 1 elim was such a huge deficit on their progress and progression, the momentum that they had built in the last 3 matches of yesterday. So really really needing to make the most of round 2 here, and meaning just weighing everything so carefully. Can't be so careful that they're afraid to take their fights, because Oceans is a great aggressive team. But, ooh, here we have it. The mind is set, but it is set on going back to lobby as the Bat Squad strikes again. Now with 5 elims to their name, dispersed between Ninja and Poison. Poison, as we were saying, definitely a crowd favorite in the chat on day 1, responsible for the majority, a little over half of the team's kills so far, and they are still a full 4-piece. Fnatic entering the match as a 3-piece, interestingly enough, coming in at a disadvantage. So knowing from the very beginning of the match they are going to have to play a bit more reserved than normal. Oceans under fire, closing the gap between themselves and GUF Savage. Savage trying to hold the opposition off at bay with the frag, but Farvoice just not letting their foot off the pedal here with Rafa. And oh my goodness, Farvoice, there is no doubt in my mind that this is a personal attack. This is a grudge match. They were out hunting, and hunting one team specifically, Rafa Esports, the Kings of the Hill, the outlying performing team in the entire first 6 matches of these finals. So this is not just huge for Farvoice, this is huge for every other team that is alive on the playing field. Every elim that you are able to get, every placement point that you're able to gain for round 2 from here on out is a point closing the gap between yourself and the Kings of the Hill, the first position holders, Rafa Esports. If you are Rafa, I think you can give yourself a little bit of forgiveness, as they entered the match with a 26-point gain above second place, so they even furthered the gap in round 1. CKRS losing Shinra fairly early on, continuing forward as a 3-piece. Now CKRS, right, another one of those sort of middle-grounded teams. Overall, probably about halfway down the placement board here, right around 10th or 11th, maybe 9th place. So certainly plenty of room for improvement. And while they're not performing badly, I think it's safe to say that what the strategies being implemented thus far are probably not going to be enough to work their way into the PMES Play-Ins if they're not ready and prepared to change things up today, here and now, ready to make a little bit of riskier plays, maybe presenting themselves in more aggressive situations, because yeah, this comfort zone of theirs is just clearly, it's riding that middle bracket. It's not enough to get where they need to go. Oceans being the bread here in this peanut butter and treble sandwich, one piece of a love triangle here. And to the northeast of this new zone, we see yet another love triangle, this time between CKRS, the Nameless, and Ritzy, but CKRS closing in on the same building as Nameless. It looks to be what should be a 3v4, or I guess technically a 2v4 with Coco being knocked, is actually a 2v2, given the Nameless's 2-2 split. That could be advantageous to the Nameless in this particular situation, as they just have not been able to find any footing in this event thus far. They've really struggled in terms of their confrontations and close quarter fights. Entering this match, I believe, last place overall. So, if anything, you know, even up against the likes of CKRS, it could be a bully situation. So, the Nameless in a 2-2 split, hey, I think if anything can be said, obviously a strategy shift is necessary for the Nameless, so this is something different. It's worth giving a shot. Probably not the right route here, but we'll see. Unfortunately for the Nameless, a little bit of zone shift coincidence hits them, and they are sandwiched in between Farvoice and CKRS. All the while, Fnatic and Mindset continuing this grudge match, with Ritzy looking onwards from the high ground. We see Crispy 4X M4 in hand, his teammate Blue doing some work right then and there on some of the Fanatics, giving the opportunity for GUF to try to pull a flank rotation into a new zone here. At least a more comfortable position in the new zone. Looks like Ocean's under fire, and GUF gonna have it at it here. Capazino and Heaven are the final two hopes for the team, and boy, oh boy, Heaven has fallen. Capazino is now the final hope, trying to make his last stand here with a frag grenade. Preliminary cooked here. If he can get any easy elims, but it does not happen as Conte shuts his dreams short with an S12. Now, Mindset making their potential final stand here up against the Fanatics as Sano sends a Fanatic member burning and blazing down into the prone zone. This is going to be a tough one to pull off as it's down to, I believe, Sano alone. But is it a 1v1? It could be here. Style pushing inwards. DBS in hand, but no health to speak of. Sano, a little bit of hesitance, and I think it might be ultimately his undoing. He had a real opportunity to push outwards there, but that DBS is so unforgiving, and so is an S12. Even the low health isn't exactly a comfortable push, as it's just basically a one-shot and done shot. Style 33. We got a DBS versus an S12, a shotgun 1v1. Honestly, I think that would have been a great time for a molly about 2 or 3 seconds prior, but trying to keep that pressure factor on, and you can see Style is pressuring and forcing Mindset out of there, and boy, oh boy, beautifully done. Little trick nade shot there. All the while, the Ocean is rising right onto Ritzy Esports, and that is a knock onto, I believe, Crispy. And this could be a real opportunity for Style 33 to maybe let this altercation take the foreground, take the focus, let these two teams dial in on one another and try to find a way to rotate out while they do fight into this new zone, because it is going to be a tough migration in. We see Midoma of Ritzy Esports in a what appears to be a 1v3 against Ocean. Realistically, a 1v2 with Unknown holding the back angle with scouting and a potential line of sight. Midoma using that hill crest ever so carefully, only presenting himself for just slivers of a moment. There's Squash taking out Style 33 of Fanatics right then and there. And is that the end for Fanatics for round 2? It may be. Either it is or it's down to their last member. I'm waiting to see if that catches up, but I think it's down to their... Yep, that's it for them. That spells the end for Fnatic Esports, but at least they do hit the bracket for placement point game. Ritzy Esports, still a 3-piece, 4 elims to their name. And closing the gap between themselves and Ocean Under Fire's Conte. Conte, very spread from the remainder of his team. They are a full 4-piece, but Conte kind of standing as the outlier here. But this could be a potential safeguard up against the likes of Ritzy Esports, especially in this case right here and now. As Conte's knocked, it's probably not going to be a safe revive for the remainder of his team, but they still have 2 more members to carry on the team name and get further up the placement point bracket. Well, as I say it, Ritzy down to 4 blue and Midoma. Will they be able to secure a revive on Rehan? It looks like they are going to try it. 4 blue, gonna try a little bit of chivalry here. All the while, CKRS Coco providing the overwatch and cover fire while his teammates try to secure the revive on Kaz. It looks like they are able to do so. And ladies and gentlemen, we're down to our final 5 teams spread across 17 players here. Coco putting a hailstorm of 5.56 bullets out into the air towards Nameless, but ultimately taking a lot of attention from Rehan of Ritzy Esports from his backside. And boy, if that is a perfect metaphor for Miramar, it's that you can't get tunnel vision when you are vulnerable from 360 degrees. This Miramar map is so open with so much variability in terms of high ground and low ground that you can be vulnerable even from 300 meters away. So you just have to have your head on a 360-degree swivel at all times. And Pape, sinking Ray Han's battleship, he did the trigonometry, he calculated the location, and he cooked that grenade better than Martha Stewart ever could. And boy, oh boy, that spells the end for Ritzy Esports in round 2, eliminated in 5th place. But with a decent number of elims to their name, it's not a bad point gain for a team that just came fresh off a chicken dinner. All right. Well, Kite, the final hope for CKRS, probably going to be playing a bit of a reserved approach here. As you can see, Kite thus far certainly hasn't been one of the more aggressive members on the team, so playing to Kite's strengths is probably going to be the name of the game. Every moment that he stays alive, every team that he survives longer than now is extra points for the team. Alex of Far Voice continuing this aggressive onslaught, even with a low ground disadvantage, even with the only being a 3-piece. They are still keeping the pressure factor on that we've only seen from Far Voice and GUF. This sort of absolute aggressive confidence thus far. All right, well, Kite of CKRS really could be in a potential world of hurt. Definitely gaining a lot of unwanted attention from the Nameless. The saving grace could be in the shape and form of Oceans Under Fire, who is preparing for oh my goodness, there's a caster curse on Kite, and a beautiful nade by the Nameless. As they finish off what remained of CKRS, Ocean Squash scouting for his team in this 1-1-2 split here. Ocean's Under Fire. You know what? We were talking about, Far Voice and GUF being comfortable in that spread position. I think you can include Oceans Under Fire overall in that group as well. Really, overall, just a fairly strong performing team, even including the rough matches that they've had. They've been able to perform so phenomenally on their good matches that it really alleviates that. Horse! We got the Lone Ranger, Mr. Minus of Far Voice Gaming, getting a little bit of compound cover here. Going to use this opportunity to boost up and prepare for what is sure to be an intense in-game altercation. All right, look at this. Linus, I was going to say, if he's not prepared to heal up here, if that's not a time to use your first aid, when is? But Conte, holding position. Patience is the name of the game. Remember what I said a few moments ago. Every underperforming team in terms of eliminations has this on their mind right now. If you're the Nameless, you just want to survive longer than another team, get those free extra points, play to your strengths, but unfortunately falling for the bait in Oceans, picking apart 2 members of the Nameless, and here comes from the backside Oceans and Far Voice with a little unintentional team up on the poor Nameless. Regardless, let's not take credit away from the improvement we are seeing from the Nameless here, but boom goes the dynamite, and Alex sent down to the prone zone. Ooh, he sunk his battleship. Pape definitely trying to play medic duty on Squash before this inevitable push from Far Voice. We got 2 teams remaining, and boom, that is that. The Oceans thrive in the desert of all places, and look at that. Beautifully placed nade by Conte, taking Alex out of the equation. Now this is interesting. Oceans down to a 3-piece here, and here you can see it. Pape focusing on the revive, trying to keep the number advantage in their favor, and Far Voice Alex picked off for the thirst before his teammate eliminated for the completion. And that is a beautiful finish from Oceans. This is exactly what we were saying. Ocean's a team who really does not take their eye off the prize. This is a team who has certainly met struggle, certainly met a lot of hurdles in their path, and that started on day 1 of finals. Coming off of a chicken dinner, extremely high elim victory, followed by, I believe, first eliminated team the following match. And then, boom, where some teams let that affect their mental, Ocean's, well, the Ocean level is just rising, ladies and gentlemen. That's my corny dad joke, because once again, just like with yesterday, after a little bit of hurdles, they keep their eye on the prize, keep their focus on the ball, and coming out here with a phenomenal chicken dinner here in round 2. Of all the places for an Ocean to thrive, it's the desert. And let's go have a look at some of these results. The match ranking as we see it. Look at that, 27-point gain here. And then we see the likes of Farvoice second with 15, GUF doing well as well. Definitely looks to be a bit of a tougher result for the likes of Afterlife. OG Esports, a little bit more of the same complications. Still haven't quite found their footing. Here are our top eliminators as they stand in round 2 of 5. Conte of Oceans, obviously no surprise. 8 elims, but look at the damage output. For every knock, there's almost an extra 100 damage to spare. We got Farvoice's minus, phenomenal performance as well. CKRS, Coco, putting in some good work. There he is, the man of the chat, Poison of the Bat Squad, and Squash of Ocean as well. We see 2 Oceans members on the top 4 bracket board here, top 5 bracket board. And look at that damage output by Oceans. Conte, are you kidding me? Literally tripling anything that's close to it. Conte is a absolute barbarian. Well, goodness. You know, it's tough to get a real assessment of just how much work some of these participants are doing off the camera. But getting a line on Conte's 3,000 damage, basically tripling that of his teammates. And this is a team where everyone is putting in good work. Conte is clearly comfortable in his close quarter confrontations. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is round 2 of 5 down, done, and dusted. We've sent our participants on the very first map ever of Erangel before we migrated on over to the dry, arid destruction in the desert, Miramar. Now, what's going to happen when we close things in on that lush, condensed jungle forest? I am, of course, speaking of Sandhawk as we return for round 3 of 5 of the PUBG Mobile Community Series France Finals Day 2 in just a few short moments. Be back soon. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back to round 3 of 5 of the PUBG Mobile Esports Community Series France Finals Day 2. And you already know what time it is. We're kicking round 3 off with a little rumble in the jungle. You already know, a little bit of Sandhawk action where you can expect some early game altercations, as it's just a bit of a smaller map. Now let's go ahead and see what sort of flight path we're working with. All right, well, not the most centralized path, but you know, that's really not a very consequential factor here, as this map is so small. You can get anywhere you want just by deploying your chute early enough, and we have already got some confrontation. Farvoice just throwing themselves into the thick of the action with Fanatics, and look at this. Now's already starting the team off with their first and second kill between him and Minus. Seiko taking a lot of damage, but still up and about. Farvoice really finding the momentum, but Style 33, that DBS could be a huge issue for them. And luckily, the nade sounds the same in every language. Oh, for a second I thought that was the QBZ showing the elim, but no, that had to be the nade finish there. And nonetheless, Farvoice, very healthy start here to round 3. 3 elims to their name. Coming in, guns a-blazing. Interestingly enough to see Kakuri dropping at the boot camp outskirts here. And they're not alone. They've got Mithra of Tribe. Tribe already one member down. Mithra thanking his lucky stars to have found that DBS, especially considering that he does not have a helmet yet. But as we know to be the case of that double-barrel shotgun, it can so often be that one and done, down, done, and dusted. And a DBS is just unforgiving. There's no room for close quarter combat mistakes up against a DBS. All right, Hater playing a battle of patience, trying to find the right opportunity to reunite with his teammates. Looks like Accelerate going to be rotating in towards Mithra, his teammate. All the while, Celestial holding position here, just utilizing this positioning as best as they can for a potential gatekeep opportunity on the likes of Tribe if Tribe is a little bit overeager. Interestingly enough to see, along with them occupying what would be considered a hotspot drop, is the spread that Celestial Esports is taking. You know, it's a confident play. Usually one that we would see from the likes of, you know, GUF or Farvoice or even Oceans. But, you know, Celestial entering the match a lot further back down the placement bracket, I believe 13th place overall. So playing a much more potentially aggressive seeking approach here. Doesn't look to have panned out just yet, but this is just the concluding portions of stage 1, and there's plenty more Rumble in the Jungle Sandhawk action to go here for round 3. Okay, well, getting eyes on the Nameless. Now, the Nameless certainly making a little bit more of a name for themselves in the previous match. Finally working their way up to that in-game, getting some placement points on the board, maybe a couple elims. But now, Ketu, pardon me, being taken down like a bad habit by the likes of Ritzy's Mitoma. Mitoma with the 3x M4 Joker in hand, trying to secure the first elim for Ritzy Esports for round 3. Now, Ritzy really keeping their eye on the ball here, having a pretty good start to the day, chicken dinner finish, and keeping their eyes locked in on trying to close that gap between themselves and Rafa. Ritzy currently entering the match at 5th place overall, so while they do have some ground to cover to make up for, they are not by any means out of the running. Yes, they are probably somewhere around 25 to 30 points behind first place, but if you think about it, Farvoice can't have more than 65, 66 points total, and so that really puts them about 10 points away from that gap between 5th and 2nd. All the while, TBSS focusing their attention onto mindset. Rehan of Ritzy Esports just trying to get properly looted. Mindset, tough start to it as Sano and his teammate are taken down, but a little bit of equality on the playing field as Tornado and Aracon are downed in retaliation, leaving things in the hands of Danzo and Flamingo. We got Danzo here trying to keep the pressure factor on while Flamingo secures a revive. Danzo DBS'd out of the equation, sent back to the prone zone and back to lobby on a first-class DBS ride. CVNT here with a DBS of his own, trying to get properly healed before this inevitable push. They are literally sandwiched in between TBSS and the heavy hitters, the kings of the hill, Rafa Esports, and a full four-piece of Rafa nonetheless. And CVNT is in a world of trouble. Not only is that vehicle giving his location away, but boy, oh boy, outnumbered, outmanned, outgunned. Just, yeah. That wasn't a lot of opportunities for 1v4ing there. If anything, his best bet may have been a vehicle retreat attempt, and I don't see that having worked out. All right. Well, understandable approach here for TBSS as they lost Aracon and Danzo just recently, now reduced down to half their starting lineup. Gonna have to dial back their approach here, change up their strategy, play a little bit more reserved and patient. And unfortunately for them, it's a little too late because all the noise and commotion made earlier between TBSS and Mindset, well, that put the drops of blood out in the water, and the sharks have smelled the blood. Rafa coming in to pick on TBSS. And look at this. Even when the numbers are fully in their favor, they do not let their eye off the strategy. A 2-1-1 split covering all angles, Overwatch scouting position on the hill, 2 members to match the push, and 1 outlier to hold a second off angle. That was a beautifully executed push by Rafa Esports, just perfectly exemplifying how they got to be such a dominant team here in the finals of these PMES Community Finals France. All right, GUF could be facing a looming push from Asteria Esports. Now, Asteria having a fairly rough start to the day, really did well on day one, and did well in the semifinals altogether, but the start of today has shown them a lot of struggle, and it's knocked them all the way down to right around the 8th place bracket. So a lot of ground to cover up for Asteria, and they find themselves up against one of the more formidable opponents that they could possibly be facing, GUF. But do my eyes deceive me, or did they just finish the job? Yep, GUF, the Gaming United force there. Unfortunately, they are united in the lobby right now, and that is a tough pill to swallow, but swallow it they must. Rafa Esports with a knock on one of their members' wipe, but he is put in that passenger seat and Ubered on to safety. Kime just doing a little vehicle scouting. Now, back in the early days of PUBG Mobile Esports, when you would see a vehicle scout on the lush, condensed, small map of Sandhawk, it would almost be certainly condemned, meaning, that the spatial audio cues that would give out to your opponents, it was just not worth the risk at the time. But at this stage, so many years later, these participants, the map hasn't changed, but the participants' skill level has, and their comfort level in this lush, condensed jungle has. They know all the geography. They know how to fight these oppositions. And now look at this, Asteria Yuga in a world of trouble as the tribe congregates on them. It's down to Yuga to get this revive on his fallen teammate Goat here, all the while his 2 remaining Asteria teammates a little further spread out, which may be advantageous here with those off angles, but Yuga down from a low ground disadvantage with the DBS, and that is quick work made of Asteria. Whatever has gotten into Asteria's mind between day 1 and 2, it has certainly knocked their mental off the game here. All the progress that they worked so hard for on day 1 seems to be being undone here before our very eyes. And look at this Tribe, you know, a team who was certainly faced a lot of struggle on day one, really keeping their eye on the prize, even at this halfway marker here for day two, coming into round three with 6 elims to their name. Well, look at this, Rafa and Ritzy. If there was ever some blood on the battlefield to be had, these are two of our top placing teams here. And unfortunately for Crispy, this is a situation outnumbered, outmanned, outgunned. Not really a lot that you can do when your Ritzy teammates are too far back to really do much in terms of reviving. Well, that's going to put Ritzy down to a 3-piece. And I'm going to say that may have been a sacrificial lamb situation for Ritzy Esports. They probably could have reunited with their teammate before the confrontation with Rafa, but I think, if anything, it was, hey, you know, you were scouting detail, you gave us the information we need, it came at a price, but it's not worth facing off with the heaviest hitters on the battlefield this early on. Well, Bat Squad just putting a world of hurt on GRX, just playing to their advantages, playing to their strengths, and playing to GRX's weaknesses. GRX has historically in this event been a team that has thrived on a more reserved, conservative, patient approach, meaning that they certainly like to acquire the guaranteed placement points by reaching that top 8 placing bracket before really attempting those aggressive situations. Understandably so. It's not something to condemn if it's objectively playing to your strengths, but up against the likes of a team that is fairly confident in their aggressive confrontations, especially with the likes of Bat Squad's Poison there, it's a tough call. But unfortunately, GRX can see that the method that they have used so far is not working. Farvoice just bullying on Celestial. All the while, the Tribe has fallen at the hands of Rafa. And Kimmy takes Accelerate down to the prone zone and back to the lobby. Look at this. Almost 2-1-1-1 split here with Rafa. Not even intentional. Just probably coincidental, because they're just so confident. They're spreading out, really trying to maximize their surface area, maximize their scouting potential, and relaying all that information to their teammates. We see Wipe's position compromised to Shinra, who immediately capitalizes with a 3x M4 in hand, securing the knock on Wipe. But this is a very questionable push here from Shinra, pushing alone, away from his teammates. The remainder of CKRS weighing the options and saying probably not worth the push at this point, especially up against Rafa, who is very likely close enough to secure that revive with a high ground advantage. Celestial's Juicy, one of 3 remaining members for the team, making a little sniper tower stand here with a 4x M4 of his own, and keeping the pressure factor onto Seiko and Alex of Farvoice. But it ends up being a little unintentional team-up with Celestial and Ritzy onto the likes of Farvoice as Alex is downed. Luckily for Alex, the benefit of Sandhawk is there's so much geographical cover to be had, and in this case, a boulder blocking a lot of bullet fire from Juicy of Celestial Esports. All right, well, Farvoice, Seiko and Minus, both at about half health here as they swallow a hefty serving of blue zone damage. Juicy on the left screen getting the knock right then and there on Nows. This is going to spell trouble for Farvoice. Farvoice, who has set so much momentum today and on day one, finding a real hurdle here from an unexpected opposition. Celestial Esports, as we said, not really, certainly not a team to condemn their performance thus far, but not a overwhelmingly impressive performance either. I believe they are right around the halfway bracket in placement, probably around 11th or 12th place here. CKRS trying to pick apart what remains of Farvoice, You know, again, we were talking about the third-party potential in Sandhawk and a lot of sharks in the water, smelling the blood and trying to get some of those easy elim stills where the opportunity is afforded. And, you know, to exemplify it, even Rafa securing the high ground, trying to get the Overwatch scouting detail, and even the heaviest hitters, the most aggressive team, is not going to say no to a third-party elim opportunity. Nameless getting a line on CKRS as Linus, Lair, securing the knock on Skaz. And this is going to be a Nameless push for better or for worse, pushing onto a full three-piece, and it did seem a little bit impulsive. Lair immediately eliminated along with his teammate, bringing Linus from what was a three-person team down to the final hope for the Nameless. And boy, oh boy, I have to say that is going to boil down to a little bit of impulsive, reckless behavior. A little too eager for that push when you have three members of the opposition still up and ready to take you out of the equation. Well, as we know to be the nature of PUBG Mobile Esports, that blue zone damage is a hurling. And Stage 4's conclusion means Stage 5 is going to bring even more damage in this smaller zone to choose from. Less real estate for our participants to migrate to. And to make matters worse, the waterway, the riverway, occupying even more of that real estate, meaning less ground to cover, less real estate to choose from. And gentlemen, with this high ground and a real gatekeep opportunity on not just Ritzy, but on Oceans Under Fire as well. Now, this could be huge, not just for Rafa Esports, but for the overall implications of the scores of this event. These are three of our top 5 placing teams right here in this little love triangle, with Rafa high ground advantage and gatekeeping opportunity. If they're able to shut off Oceans Under Fire and Far Voice, well, all that momentum gained on Rafa in round 2 would be undone. And look, Squash, the Lone Ranger, just a bold flank rotation on the horse. Is it going to work? Well, gentlemen, with an S12 saying heck no, but Squash making Kenny meet the prone zone, and gentlemen as well. This is Oceans from a low ground putting a hurting on the opposition here. And look at that. Oceans just like that all the way up to 4 elims. And Squash, boy, if he is not the star performer of the team thus far, responsible for 75% of those teams' elims. Not to mention they've worked their way up to the top 4 placement. Those are just extra placement points on the board, with a very weakened Rafa Esports down to Wipe and Wipe alone. And we've seen Rafa as a solo gain all the way up to those top 2, top 3 placement brackets, already up to top 4. That has got to be the one to focus on here. If you're anyone else on the playing field, the name of the game should subconsciously be eliminating Rafa Esports as early as possible, ideally before the placement point marker. All right, Wipe as a solo pushing onto a 2-piece. I mean, honestly, I agree with the push. Never were his odds better than before. Oceans could third party, and while he has one member of CKRS downed and the remainder of the CKRS team away, it was the right time to push, but outnumbered, outmanned, outgunned. It was a strong effort with what he could do. CKRS now thrown out of the frying pan into the fire, or into the ocean, so to speak, as they have got another altercation on their hands, this time from Oceans Under Fire. With one knock onto Coco already, the full 4-piece of Oceans going to aggressively push on a weakened CKRS. And look at this. Perfectly confident push. Absolute berserker tactic. Barbarians on the battlefield and Oceans Under Fire, showing you exactly how they got to be one of the top performing teams in this event. Not a bit of hesitance on that push, and not losing any of their members in the process here. Taking CKRS down, one more member down to a 2-piece now of Kite and Shinra. All the while, Far Voice, another 2-piece remaining here, an opportunity to lay low, let the focus be taken up by these other two teams, Ocean and CKRS. Let them duke it out and just take those extra placement points as they're handed to you on a platter. Unknown, responsible for one of the team's 5 elims here, but still a full 4-piece team with only 8 people on the playing field. Half of them are Ocean's members. This is Ocean's game to win or Ocean's game to lose, as they do have the high ground. They do have all the advantages in their favor. Now, only thing that can really separate them from that chicken dinner victory is an impulsive mistake or a well-placed utility. All right. Unknown, just not ready to present any opportunities to the likes of CKRS. And Far Voice doing exactly what Far Voice should. Even as a top-performing team, you know, when you have the opportunity to just absorb easy points, and you're weighing the risk v reward of pushing onto these teams here, risking your neck when you could just lay low for another 30 seconds and wait for a team to be eliminated and take those extra couple placement points, well, it's an easy decision, especially when you only have a 2-piece remaining. Unfortunately, the aggression of Oceans Under Fire is a relentless aggression. Squash, the heaviest hitter of the team this round, keeping the momentum up, this time focusing on the likes of Far Voice and Squash, not knowing where to focus his attention, getting taken down via S12, but bringing minus of Far Voice down to a solo hope here, and we got a 3v1 and an opportunity for a third-party option for CKRS. A little saving grace potential for CKRS if they could just lay low, then those extra placement points that would have gone to Far Voice would go to them. But Kite is spotted. The Kite shot down by Conte of Oceans, and look at this, a full 4-piece Oceans using their numbers in their favor. Look at them spread out, occupying literally about half of the width of this zone. High ground and all. Spreading out their numbers and just bullying the playing field. Even with 2 knocks on their player base, those 4 numbers are still an intimidation factor for the opposition. I believe it's just 2 solos. And there goes Far Voice. So CKRS Shinra did it, surviving that extra couple seconds, getting those extra couple placement points. And then, yeah, at that point, why not push out? It's never going to be an easy 1v4. So the main point gain of that for CKRS was laying low from 3rd place to 2nd place and just absorbing those free extra placement points. And what a beautiful finish it was, ladies and gentlemen. Sandhawk, always just a ton of fun to watch. Just being that smaller map, you know, just being so much more condensed, thrown right into the thick of the action much earlier on, and always with a panic factor up it as an option, meaning that there's so much geographical cover to take, more grass to hide inside and trees and boulders to hide behind, that you can basically be stepping in a sea of snakes anywhere you go. You could have an enemy 2 feet away and be practically clueless. So you have to have your alertness just at max level here. Oceans Under Fire, talk about thriving. They thrive in the desert map of Miramar before taking a back-to-back here and working their way, second overall ranking here, before just another phenomenal performance here. 8 elims, 18 points. So yeah, first place, 10-point placement gain, 8 elims to add on to it. I mean, what can you say? But the Oceans are thriving, okay? And Far Voice doing what Far Voice does, never putting themselves in a bad position, even when the game doesn't go their way, still thriving. And look at this, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like we're adjusting just as we go here, but tons of PUBG Mobile action await us. We are only halfway done with day 2 of the PUBG Mobile PMES Community Series France Finals Day 2. We still have 3 more matches of PUBG Mobile Mayhem to go today before we work our way in to the final day tomorrow, where it'll be the last stand, the last opportunity for players to leave their mark, really set the tone, and be one of the top 2 teams advancing to the PMES Play-Ins on July 29th. And ideally from there, fingers crossed, if everything goes as they hope, to the PMSL and then onwards to PMGC. Well, the first step of the ladder starts here. Ladies and gentlemen, 3 more matches to go. We'll be back at you in just a few short moments with round 4. 2 short matches to go. That's how basic numbers work. We'll be back in just a few short moments with round 4 of 5 of the PUBG Mobile Community Series France Finals Day 2 in just a few short moments. See you soon.
those thoughts lead you astray. Then I cry, then I feel pain. Why do I suffer so much? I would love to feel your touch. Baby, I don't know where to go. It's so lost without you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have returned for round 4 of 5 of the PUBG Mobile Esports Community Series France Finals Day 2. And you already know what time it is. A little bit of error correction as we return for the second time today to Erangel, the very first map ever introduced to PUBG Mobile. And any mistakes made in round 1, well, this is your opportunity to identify those, correct those errors, and reset that tone here on the Erangel maps. Let's go ahead and get into round 4 of 5. Here we go. All right, well, we got Farvoice's Seiko. I'm not sure where his teammates are. A little bit of a spread from Farvoice, but again, one of the few teams that I think should feel fairly confident in spreading their wings that way. But CKRS, just a really rough go of it after a great round 3, just being thrown into the frying pan and from there into the fire. This time the fire is Kokuri Esports chipping away at CKRS, and this could undo all that recent progress made in round 3. Meanwhile, GRX and OG, two well, let's just say it. Let's call it like it is. Two teams who have shown a lot of room for improvement here in this event, gonna face off with one another, and this could be bad news bears for either team. You know, neither of these teams can really afford another early elimination. This early on, they need to be having phenomenal high placement, high elim matches basically for the rest of this event if they want any shot of making it to the play-ins on the 29th. And GRX with 1 elim to their name, taking OG down to a 3-piece, a slight number advantage in their favor. But as you can see, I mean, it's just the beginning portions of stage 1 here. Everyone's still just trying to get properly looted, properly equipped. So this is going to be a battle kind of taking place with whatever you have on you is what you got. Fair is not really the name of the game in an early drop spot. It kind of boils down to luck and who gets the right guns, the right armor. And in this case, GRX seems to be faring a bit luckier than OG. But also, give credit where credit is due. Now that they do identify themselves as a full 4-piece against a 2-piece, let's see how they use those numbers. Let's see if they're willing to change up the strategy from what has clearly not worked too well for them the first half of the finals. Let's see if they're willing to get aggressive. But here we see Clutch, almost like out of a movie, pushing to the opposition one at a time. In this case, try use off angle, work to his advantage, and he is not fooled by a second by Dorado's off angle. And try out clearly using the spatial audio cues beautifully. I mean, he must have those earbuds turned up to max level because he heard the rotation easily. Dorado was never up for question in terms of where he was positioned. And look, a little insult to injury as the shots onto the crate come in. And look at that, GRX, 4 elims to their name. A very, very much needed high elim start to the match. Maybe this is the shift that they need to get their confidence and momentum going. Well, CKRS, you know, what can you say? Good round 3, and then a tough pill to swallow, especially for Coco, finding himself really in a world of hurt with Kokuri getting ready to to hardcore parkour their way onto the roof. But Coco with a beautiful shot on the Black Boy. And oh my goodness, I had thought that the Kakuri member who tried to jump the roof missed, but he did not. He landed on the bracket, but Coco not fooled for a second, and the shotgun to the face sounds the same in every language. Kite still remains. Coco jumping off the rooftop in just a split second of time before acquiring a third knock. What are we seeing from CKRS? They refuse to lose, but then, oh, the caster curse as Kite is taken down, and Coco finishes it! Coco squad wipes with literally 10 to 15% of overall health. Coco, all 4 elims. CKRS moves forward thanks to one man alone. The one-man army deserving a celebratory dance as Coco dances on the grave of the opposition. A 1v4. You want to know how you end up on a TikTok short? That right there is how you end up on a TikTok short. Goodness, that might have been the squad wipe of the event thus far. That was insane. Boy, we were talking about a much-needed momentum shift, and what CKRS was able to do for themselves in round 3 almost was undone here at the beginning stages of round 4, but thanks to one man, a one-man army of Coco. Yeah, he knows I'm talking about him. You know I'm talking about you. You earned it. Absolutely earned it. That was a real treat in PUBG Mobile Esports. It's a pretty rare spectacle to see a no health 1v4. We got pretty lucky to catch that on live stream. All right, if you look at this map here on the right, we can see just outside of the northern portions of this new zone, which, by the way, is a horrific zone shift for these participants. So much water and a contest station for who's going to get positioning on military base, who's going to put their eggs in that military island shift. Well, it sets up for a lot of bridge camp opportunities. It sets up for a lot of bad news here. If you're running into the Bat Squad, like let's say you find yourself being Ritzy Esports and having Donzo cut short at the hands of 077K before getting to cross the water. 077, hungry for a thirst, hungry for more. Bat Squad acquiring their first elim. They get their first taste of blood for round 4, and they are hungry for more. But TBSS, even as a two-piece of Tornado and Flamingo, we saw this two-piece of Tornado and Flamingo last match or the match before, and they were able to secure very significant placement gain even as a duo. So I'm not ready to rule them out, even against a aggressive team like Bat Squad and a player like Poison. TBSS, it could all boil down to a split-second mistake by the Bat Squad. Well, here we have it. Hovercraft rotation from the likes of Farvoice, and not a bad move here. We saw in a lot of PMSL events a lot of in-game hovercraft endings, especially in the North American region. But will that pan out here in a PUBG Mobile Europe's esports, a higher level of, frankly, a higher level of competition sometimes. And I frankly think that it probably won't pan out the same way, but we'll see. Asteria and Rafa, boy, Asteria can't really catch a break up against the likes of Rafa Esports. I believe it was either Miramar or Sandhawk that we saw Asteria cut short at the hands of these heavy hitters of Rafa Esports. And this could spell a little bit more of the same conclusion as we see Goat is knocked and leaving everything in the hands of Aryuga and his teammate. All the while, GUF just picking on other members of Asteria. This is, honestly, this is going to boil down to probably a bit of error on Asteria's end, spreading out their resources a little too thin. A team that really has performed on the better side of the bracket board here, especially in the semifinals. Nice nade by Savage. Beautifully placed, but still at a low ground disadvantage here. Can he secure the thirst? We got Bronx trying to get one more nade knock before they push up there. Just trying to even the odds as best as they can. And gentlemen of Rafa Esports with a takedown on GUF. Now this is good for everyone else on the playing field. No matter who wins, Rafa or GUF, it's good news for everyone else that one of these teams is eliminated early. Ideally, if you're the rest of the playing field, you want to see Rafa eliminated before that placement bracket. But either of these heavy hitters will do. All right. Looks like a 3v3. And Rafa, talk about discipline and self-control. When you are the highest performing team, the most confident, aggressive team on the playing field, and you know when to weigh your options and say, yeah, well, we'd probably come out victorious, maybe, but is it worth losing a member or two members in the process? No. And they have this discipline and self-control to bow out and ensure that they have those numbers for the in-game finish. Well, Heaven doing everything he can to make sure he's not sent back to heaven himself. All the while, Farvoice swallowing a high-calorie dinner of bullet damage at the hands of GUF. Alex just on top here of GUF, preparing that preliminary nade as CKRS and Ritzy square off. Well, that's tough because CKRS has worked so hard to ensure that they kept that momentum going after that early game 1v4 by Coco, but one man can only do so much. And up against the likes of a high-performing team like Ritzy Esports, it's a tough pill to swallow, but CKRS nonetheless eliminated long before meeting the barrier for placement points. So, tough go, but they are showing a lot more persistence and determination than we saw in day one. So, CKRS can't rule them out, but that is definitely a tough pill to swallow. Catching eyes on Hater of Tribe Esports, looking like he is going to be pulling a flank rotation to pick up his teammate, someone called an Uber, in the blue zone. All the while, Tribe and GRX, we got Touch in a 1v2 potential altercation here. It's Touch v Clutch. And here you see it, Clutch with a DBS in hand, resorting to a frag. If he can get this preliminary knock, why not do it? But unfortunately for him, it's Tryu taken down instead before the pull-up from the GRX teammates. All right, well, it's panning out in their favor. High ground working in full effect. And talk about something you wish wasn't on main broadcast, throwing the nade at his own vehicle. Hey, I don't care who you are, what tier you play at, even at the pro level, ditzy mistakes happen. And case in point, Clutch throwing a frag grenade from an enemy 3 feet away. I'd call that a ditzy mistake. And probably just showing that there is a lot of room for study, room for improvement, and a lot of adjustments needed to come. Tribe, 4 elims to their name, 3 members of their team still up, very much still in the equation. Ritzy, another full 4-piece team, and we've seen this from them pretty frequently. This seems to be their move, is in keeping their numbers in their favor for an in-game finish. All the while, Mindset putting some work in on the aggressive GUF team. Now that could be pretty significant for the playing field as well. A team like Mindset getting a finish on GUF. You know, Mindset at the very bottom of the placement board here in this event, currently in 17th place overall, versus GUF, who stands at 5th. I mean, that's a huge upset and spells a real opportunity for the other 35 players on the battlefield. I guess the other 31 players on the battlefield. Looks like Tribe, Hater, dangerously close to the opposition in Farvoice. Yep, that looks to be Alex, who he's so close to. Alex playing the role of Belly Bandit, a sneaky little snake, not for the sake of camping. It's camping with a purpose. It's strategy in full effect. A lot of self-control there. But Mithra of Tribe, oh my goodness, talk about huge upsets. We had the mindset on GUF, but if we have an upset like this, another top-performing team bullied with Farvoice being... We have Alex of Farvoice being removed at the hands of Tribe. If we have another huge upset where a bottom-placing team is able to take out a top-placing team before the bracket of placement points, that could spell a intense, all-out aggressive in-game zone for the remainder of the teams. Look at this. Ocean's desperate to try to get in zone. It is just chipping away at their health, unknown in really a race against the clock and up against a gatekeep from TBSS. Luckily, Conte doing what Conte does best and eliminating the opposition's hopes early. Little love tap there. Vehicle to vehicle as Unknown says, thank you for saving me. Now let's get ourselves into this new zone. Every man for himself vehicle approach, spreading out their assets, diversifying their portfolio, trying to ensure that they don't have every member of their team taken out in one spray. Well, Oceans Under Fire is still going to have a decent ways to go and a dangerous route to work their way into this new zone. All the while, GUF kind of not really catching a moment of rest here. Been the focal point of a lot of enemy teams the last 5 minutes, and now, even as a two-piece of Bronx Flank and Heaven, still being focused on, this time by Oceans. And I think they got the right idea. Split up and try to work your way into zone. Try to at least secure some placement points. And talking about placement points, we got eyes on a sneaky water snake, Vexy of Celestial. It is no question what is happening here. Celestials, Vexy, and Goose are trying their best to get those placement points. They have assessed the performance thus far, and they said we can try to have our heroic squad-wide performances, but the best odds of point gain here are going to be through that placement bracket before we take on some in-game confrontations. It might not be the most brave strategy, but to argue the effectiveness would be, well, it would be wrong. Oceans. Well, half of the Oceans have run dry here. Then and there at the hands of Mindset. Mindset really hitting round 4 with a vengeance. Down to a 3-piece. And ironically, I was expecting to see a lot more than 3 elims to their name, but I'm sure the damage will be a lot more accurate reflecting. Either way, a 2v3 up against Oceans, even with a high ground advantage going to Mindset, I'm not sure that that's a fight that they are going to be fully confident taking on. Speaking of fights that might not be as easy to take on, pushing on the Bat Squad. But as you can see, the hovercraft turning poison into a bowling pin. And now Bat Squad in a world of trouble as 077k is their final hope. The last bat in the cave is about to drop if he does not pull off something miraculous here. And look, those hovercrafts are so advantageous in these in-game bully strats, but they are very difficult to secure a thirst on, a run over on when the opposition has that tree. It's almost like just playing whack-a-mole, but they are able to do so successfully. And look at that 2-1-1 split there, kind of spreading out, using the 2-piece to push. Either way, well done. Oceans bullying what remains of Celestials right then and there. And that is going to bring Oceans right on up to 3 elims. Ritzy Esports still, even at this moment, a full 4-piece team. And I say it time and time again, you cannot put enough emphasis on being a full 4-piece team come an Erangel in-game zone. Seiko, one of the 2 final hopes for Farvoice. He's got a line on Kime of Rafa. And, as much as I want to condemn Rafa for taking these small shacks, I mean, that it's a team that you just, there's no way to question their strats when it works to their favor. They know how to exercise their strengths, and I'm not going to question. Bronx Blank of GUF being bullied on here, but then returning the favor with a double knock here. Now bringing Ritzy down to a two-piece of 4 Blue and Crispy. And look at this. They are trying their best to join their fallen teammates and help, but now a little too late. Luckily, they have Heaven down on low health, and even from a low ground, Crispy with the S12. A shotgun sounds the same in every language. I say it time and time again. It might have been a late push to assist, but they are able to at least get their third member saved and revived. Squash of Oceans. Well, it looks to be a 2v3, a 2v4 up against the likes of Tribe. As Games United Force, as we just saw, eliminated before our eyes. Now we are down to our final 8 teams. Any team that you survive longer than now is extra points on the board. Those placement points could be the crucial difference maker between advancing on to the play-ins or not. Well, Unknown, certainly not making the name that he was hoping for himself right there. If he is getting known, it's not for what he wanted to be known for, as he leaves everything in the hands of Squash. Squash needing to get a lucky nade here before the push from Tribe, but Accelerate coming in with a DBS in hand. S12s from Mithra and Hadar, and this is going to be a quick ending on the Oceans. The Oceans have dried up then and there as they end in 8th place. A little bit of placement points, but look at this. This is just a different Tribe esports than we have seen in previous matches. This is a Tribe esports worth being afraid of. And look at this. Rafa, even in this spread of Kimmy and his teammate, even as a two-piece, they are comfortable spreading out, diversifying their assets. And honestly, and as a two-piece, given their positioning, I think it makes sense. You know, the ability to assist your teammate probably slim to none, but if they are shot out, at least you have the extra shot at those placement points. Gentlemen, a sneaky snake in the grass, or in this case, the bush, as we'll say, as he is swimming in a pool of Ritzy Esports enemies. 4 Blue and Crispy so close to him, and they are completely unaware of Gentleman's positioning. Blue, making the most of these idle moments, pre-boosting and trying to ensure his best possible odds here in what is sure to be an intense in-game round 4. We got 2 minutes left of the stage 6. Will we even meet a stage 8 today in round 4? I don't know. Oh, Gentleman has spotted, and well, as gentlemanly as you are politely giving the elim to Ritzy Esports, and oh, I have jinxed it. Caster Curse on Ritzy as the Nameless pick the easy third-party elim steal and say, hey, we could use a free point. Thank you for it. Well, as much as they want that to be the end of Rafa, it is not. Kime, the final coin in the back pocket. They still have one rabbit in the hat, so to speak, and Kime, every team surviving, any team that Kime survives longer than, it's just more points on the board, more points to broaden the gap between first place and the rest of the playing field, as Rafa has become the first team to hit the triple digits. They have just passed the 100-point marker, reaching a total of 101 points. Who is going to be the Cruella de Vil to Rafa's 101 here? It could be anyone, or it could be no one. Look at the spread here. A lot of ground remaining and a little bit of coast being swallowed up. Easy to say here that the compound cover advantage is pretty sweet for Farvoice, given that they have a position in the new zone. All the while, Tribe continuing this warpath, continuing this onslaught on the rest of the playing field. It's like no one told Tribe how they performed in the previous matches. They got a bit of productive amnesia. And they said, we woke up today thinking we were Michael Jordan. And no one told them they weren't. So they are. And now look at this. A round 4 presenting a different Tribe gaming than we've seen in the first half of these finals. And it's paying off to their favor beautifully. I think that goes to show just how big of a factor confidence can be in PUBG Mobile esports, especially at the higher tiers. A little bit of confidence can be the difference between a 3-game win streak and just a bottom of the board day. And especially look at let's say take a look at teams like Tribe, Celestials, even Nameless in this match. All 3 teams showing a real change in strategy. And for 2 of those 3 teams, it's panned out beneficially. Celestials, I think that it's pretty easy to assess that objectively. The strengths are at making it to the placement. The weaknesses are in the confrontations, the CQCs, their 1Vs. But it's painting the portrait of what they need to improve on. Now, Nameless versus Far Voice. Let's focus on the action at hand as Seiko and Minus. It always ends up being down to these two, Seiko and Minus, up against the Nameless. And the Nameless might have been able to make a name for themselves in this match, but up against the likes of Far Voice, even with Seiko there on his own, it probably, I think their name might be cut a little bit shorter than it needed to be. But look at that. Seiko does spot the final member of Rafa. Kime sent back to the lobby in 6th place. So Rafa, even on their lesser performing games, with a decent number of elims, I'm sure, and 4 elims on the board and those placement points to add to it, Rafa does not know how to fail. Tribe Esports just on a momentum shift that I haven't seen in this event. It is a real impressive shift here. Tribe, who has underperformed up until maybe last match or match before, really taking round 4 into their hands, in their grasps, and just annihilating so many oppositions here and capitalizing as best as they can on an in-game opportunity, picking off these weakened teams. And now we find ourselves in a 2v3 altercation, but it's a 2v3 where the 2-piece has a hovercraft. And that could be what they need to even the odds up against Tribe here and now. Granted, also, I think Far Voice, Minus, and Seiko, just such phenomenal performing players, even in their aggressive situations. Even as a 2v3 standard, this could be a fair fight here. But that's just not, I don't know, because Tribe has really, really found the confidence in this match. I'll tell you what, I'm going to predict a Tribe finish here for the sake of rooting for the underdog who has the number advantage. I still put Far Voice as the odds favor here, given that they have that hovercraft and just such high skill levels. But Minus literally lining up just like fish on a platter here and presenting the damage to the opposition is Hater AFK. Well, boy, of all the times to have device issues, if that's what it is, that right there is the nade to change the tides. Now, unfortunately, Far Voice's Minus had to see that Tribe lost a member to the zone, but still, Minus using the hovercraft to his advantage, and that becomes his vehicle cover, and wow, does he do it! Accelerate down to almost no health, but it's a shotgun v shotgun. One shot could finish it, and even the odds. Minus swallowing the damage, and who does it? Far Voice. Who does it better than Far Voice? None. None except for maybe Rafa, but boy, I had to say it. I had to. You know, I will get criticized across the board, I'm sure, for rooting for an underdog that I claimed who even had less. The underdog had more players on their team. Less players on their team here. Far Voice Gaming at a disadvantage there but still with such high skill level that even in that 2v3, even with Tribe's momentum, you just hate to say it's a done deal. And look at the way Minus was able to play that perfectly. First, utilizing the hovercraft as a pressure factor, just pinching the opposition in, keeping them running towards the trees, keeping them really on a panic factor. And then once that hovercraft becomes a little too much damage taken, well, then it becomes your cover. That's when it's all that's separating you from the line of fire from Tribe. And Minus, you know, in a shotgun v shotgun close quarter confrontation, it all came down to who gets that first shotgun hit. And in this case, Far Voice, skill pays out. And Tribe, let's not take credit away from where credit is due. Such a momentum shift over the course of just one real match. That this is the real shift. Tribe slowly working towards the shift here. Round 4 is where that switch flipped. And boy, oh boy, did Tribe learn that they play best when they are confident in themselves. And that little bit of confidence can make all the difference. Every, professional basketball player, every professional musician will tell you it takes a certain level of delusion to be successful. And sometimes that's what you need. And Tribe, just the right amount of delusion to become what they're dreaming to be. And ladies and gentlemen, that's 4 rounds. Down, done, and dusted. But we still have one match to go today. 30 minutes remain of Day 2 of the PUBG Mobile Esports Community Series France Finals. Day 2, who is going to set the final tone before working into the last day of these finals? Well, we'll find out in just a few short moments as we return for our final match of the day. Be back soon. Wasn't it supposed to be a Miramar? Why does it say match 4? Okay. All right. All right. Well, y'all think you can predict what's going to happen? Well, unfortunately for y'all, we are keeping you on your toes because we are returning instead of the desert. We're going to the lush, condensed forest and jungle of Sandhawk once again, ladies and gentlemen. And yeah, as it was said in round 4, it stands as well in round 5. This is the opportunity for the participants to correct the errors made in round 3. What didn't work for you? Well, assess it and change it here in the final round of the day. This is our participants' final hope to set the tone as we move into our final day tomorrow of the PUBG Mobile PMES France Community Finals. TBSS definitely a little bit of ground to cover up here, a lot of ground to make up. And speaking of ground to make up, Afterlife really very much in need of just a phenomenally opposite shift in strategy, meaning they need to find some way for the next 5 games to have unbelievably good performances, meaning extremely high elims and extremely high placements. I mean, chicken dinner 10 elim matches, essentially for the next 5 matches. This last match here and the entirety of day 3. That's kind of the only hope I see for them in terms of moving on to the play-ins. And all the while, mindset right here in front of our eyes against the likes of GUF, which means a little bit of revenge opportunity for GUF after last match when mindset started shifting the tides here and focusing in on some of these higher performing teams. GUF found themselves at the bottom end of that altercation, and CVNT with a Tommy gun to the dome doing double work here, taking Capozino out as well. And unfortunately for them, that is going to be a mindset victory as they push forward. It's not over altogether. Savage is still up in the equation, but every moment allowed for mindset to revive their fallen teammates is a moment wasted by Savage in this case. Now it's a battle once again of shotguns as the S12 faces off against a DBS. CVNT in full form with these jump shots, but desperately needing a reload and ultimately missing a critical shot where Savage does not. Luckily, the numbers pan out in favor for Mindset, and what almost looked to be a upset there, Mindset is able to come through with a clutch and shut GUF down for a second time in 2 matches. This is a different mindset than we had seen in previous days, previous matches. This is a mindset who has their mindset. All right. TBS of Patience up against the likes of GRX. Now, GRX, normally, you know, you would say that would be the time to bully them because they seem to buckle under these high pressure moments in close quarter combat. But after last match, I'm not ready to say that, especially given the leap forward that they made in the last match versus TBSS's, we'll call it their struggle that they've faced a little bit more so lately. I think given those momentum shifts, it's not exactly something I would want to push out into, especially this early on in match 5, when so much can ride on this. we got the likes of Ritzy versus Nameless. Now, Nameless, if I'm not mistaken, Nameless put a hurting on Ritzy in last match as well. This was, round 4 was a match for the underdogs, but this could be where the big bullies here kind of remind these underdogs how they became so. Or this could be a caster curse situation where Red Eyes makes Ritzy Esports kind of choke on those words, as the Nameless really making a name for themselves here in these last couple matches, coming through, taking a high-performing team out of the equation, and same for GRX, taking TBSS out. The Nameless and GRX, they are really shifting and finding their momentum, finding their footing, adjusting what they need to adjust. Is it too little too late? I don't know. It'll come down and be a lot more apparent by about round 3 or 4 tomorrow. But as for now, it's definitely something that I like to see moving forward. Serpent of Afterlife, basically, wow. Wow. Well, you don't want to see that from one of the bottom performing teams, is a reluctant hesitance to engage in altercations. Now, that wasn't a fair assessment for Serpent, as he was just outnumbered and outgunned. But to find them still holding this reserved approach of waiting till in-game to try to acquire points, it clearly is not working for them, and they will have no shot of getting to those play-ins if they maintain that approach. Well, blind as a bat is a saying that we have heard before, but probably not in this event. We might have to hear it this time around, though, as the Bat Squad is facing a world of hurt at the hands of CKRS. CKRS, who has really been shifting the tides here, and I believe they've worked their way all the way up to the top half of the bracket, now at about 6th or 7th place, maybe 8th place overall. But this is a huge leap forward, a huge closing in the gap between themselves and the top performing teams here. So, I mean, to see CKRS as a full 4-piece, a spread out approach on a one-man weakened Bat Squad, it's a pretty strong position to be in. All right, I'm seeing in the chat, Amanda saying, I'm going to say Far Voice is going to get the back-to-back. She says, well, anything can happen. Far Voice still being a full 4-piece, but 0 elims to their name. But it is Far Voice. Ew, I don't know. CKRS guys with about as vulnerable of a push forward as you can get. But 077, you know, as just a one-man army, doesn't really have the luxury of peaking afforded to him. So he has to wait for them to come through that doorway and just hope for the best. Unfortunately, the numbers in CKRS's favor, and they bully him perfectly. Well, Afterlife shall be going to join the rest of his or her teammates in the Afterlife as they are brought down to 18th place overall here. That is a tough one. You know, Afterlife really showing that there's a lot of room for improvement, a lot of study time ahead of them, a lot of practice drills, a lot of opposition studies needed here before they move forward in their next event. But, you know, if there's ever, you know, an opportunity to build that experience, to build that synergy, it's here and now. Speaking of synergy, we see OG Esports, who has seemed to find some new footing as well. And now this time thrown into the clutches of Asteria. Now Asteria, who has been a top performing team in the semifinals and on day one, really did not get their Braveheart pep talk moving into day two. They might not have got their good nights of rest, or they may not have had their bowl of Wheaties for breakfast, but whatever has affected the mental of Asteria, it has certainly been a tough day for them on day two. But their overall position still in the top half bracket, finding themselves around 9th place overall. But that's a lot of room to cover, a lot of slack in the rope to make up for in 5 short matches. Speaking about making up slack, Tribe Warriors really, really impressing me in the previous match. And can they maintain a little bit of that in this final match? It would certainly be a huge critical boost in their mental and their confidence and their momentum moving into the final day of the PUBG Mobile PMES France Community Finals. CKRS, with one member out of the equation, and unfortunately, it's one of their absolute heaviest hitters, with Coco pulling off what I'm just going to call it the squad wipe of the event thus far. A 1v4 with less than 20% overall health. Well, that is the one member, one of the two members of CKRS that is not up now, and that is a big issue. But you know who does have all members up? To no one's surprise, is Rafa. Rafa with one elim to their name, not even a bit concerning to me, because we've seen them time and time again just capitalize on these in-game eliminations and placement points. Rafa, you know, already at the 103-point mark, which means only a 2-point gain since the previous, I guess since 2 matches ago, or pardon me, in one match, 2-point gain. Now, overall, Rafa has performed a little bit lesser than they did in the first 3 matches of the day. What was entering the day at a 27-point gain between themselves, or 27-point lead between themselves and second place after round 2, as well, that's been cut in half. And now they only lead Farvoice by 13. And yeah, they only lead Oceans by 16. It is a much more realistic change in the tides. As we move into day 3, if Rafa is eliminated early in round 5 today, tomorrow could be a battle between our top 3 teams for who wants to be the king of the hill. Which two teams really, really wanted their slot in the PMES Community Finals? Pardon me, sign-ins, play-ins, play-ins. Kite, one of 2 final hopes for CKRS. This is going to be a critical standoff heads-up match between CKRS and Nameless. If they square off, these are 2 teams who have really found their late footing in this event. In the last 3 matches, both of these teams have changed the tides, but going up against one another, it's bad news for one of them. Oceans, one of our top performing teams, could be in a world of trouble up against a underdog like OG. And this is, again, the second time in 2 games, if OG pulls this off, the second time in 2 matches where OG is able to pull off an underdog upset. And taking Oceans down to their final hope, unknown. All the while, Mindset, another underdog surprise overturn, I guess you could say, on Asteria. Asteria just not feeling that confidence factor today. But guess who is? Mindset. Mindset, absolutely phenomenal performance last match, and they are showing to not let their foot off the pedal here to end the day. They are coming into day 3 with a confidence and momentum factor as good as they can get. Well, Betho, one of Asteria's heaviest hitters here, a ways away from his teammate Goat, readily equipped with that M416 DBS combo, awaiting what is certain to be an intense Sandhawk endgame. 4X, Glacier M4 in hand, but not really anything to scout information to. Tribe and OG, the battle continues. The exchange of frag grenades. Who can get that Hellfire knocked first? As it looks to be a 2v2. Oh, Mithra is down, done and dusted. Pardon me, a 2v3. And now a 2v2 as OG evens the odds. Touch Me taking a little bit of bullet damage, brought down to just below 75% of his overall health. And now OG really gonna have to make the most of this opportunity. Shat's preparing a frag grenade, gonna try to get that lucky preliminary takedown on Touch. And, well, finding himself severely off the mark. Touch swallowing a little bit of that zone damage, but what OG is not planning for is the outlier of Accelerate. This one-off off angle could be the crucial saving grace for his teammate Touch. But OG does enshroud themselves in what cover they can, securing the finish on Touch, and now Accelerate finding himself in a position where he has brought unwanted attention to himself. He does even the odds a bit there with a takedown on Shakalaka. However, Shat's there to try to secure a revive. This is up to Accelerate to decide, is this his opportunity to dip out? And he decides to go for a risky push to secure a thirst, and swallowing a spoonful of regret as he is sent back to the lobby, and OG will move forward as a two-piece. Well, that will be the bracket replacement points, ladies and gentlemen. Any team that you survive longer than now is just extra points on the board. And Mindset's Jin, one of the members of a full four-piece, with eyes on the weakened two-piece of Shakalaka and Shats. The unfortunate factor of Sandhawk, as OG is about to find out, even though they played that altercation, well, all that noise and commotion gave their location away to the high ground holders across the way in Mindset, and it was just slim pickings from there on out. All right, down to our final few teams, and look at the spread here, ladies and gentlemen. Unquestionably, the only compound cover being utilized right now would be from GRX on the outskirts of Boot Camp and Shakalaka in the northern portions of Zone, both finding themselves inside this new shift. Not much of a migration needed for the teams outside of Zone, but a fight needing to be had between Rafa and Nameless. And, you know, again, we say it time and time again, Rafa only leading second place Farvoice by, I guess now, 11 points. That gap is closing. But they did meet the bracket replacement points, and this is usually where Rafa shifts their gears into a lot more aggression. And here they find themselves at a low ground disadvantage with a takedown on their teammate Kemi. And now, gentlemen, to follow, it's going to be riding in the hands of Wipe and Kenny. Oh, well, Kenny finding himself as the last hope for Rafa in a position where any sliver of peeking that he does is almost certain death, but to stay alive a few moments longer could be the extra placement points that they need to at least maintain their lead. But Mindset shutting the Nameless down a little bit early. Mindset 8 elims, a full 4-piece team. Just the difference that confidence can make to bring a bottom performing team up to one of the most impressive 180 shifts in performance that we've seen in the finals of this event. And look here, Shakalaka, the last OG left, and boy, of all the teams to run into, you probably wouldn't want it to be Farvoice or Rafa, but slim pickings, and that's who you're up against. They don't know about his location just yet, so if you are Shakalaka, the name of the game is probably being a sneaky little jungle snake and letting these numbers dwindle. That's your best hope for extra points. All right. Kite. 3x M4 aimed outwards at CV, getting some connecting damage, taking him down to about half. Not really, not even half. Not really enough to even keep that pressure factor on. And CV has weighed the options of that vehicle. He knows at best it's just cover at this point. Far Voice maintaining that pressure factor onto Mindset with a hilltop altercation. It is going to be a connecting nade. 2 birds, 1 stone, as Mindset Jin is knocked along with Thirsting Sano. This is just the in-game Far Voice that we have come to know and love in this event. Really spreading out their wings here and making the most of those numbers. Seiko taking a line of fire from Kite, but not absorbing any of that damage. We're down to our final 3 teams spread across 6 players, ladies and gentlemen. We got a 3v2, v1 in favor of Far Voice here. Now, if your Mindset's final hope, you would want to be laying low, but unfortunately too little too late. You've already put the shots out in the air and your location is known, and they are going to try to get that easy nade kill. So I guess if you are CKRS, it's a weighing of the options. You both have had great performing matches, CKRS and Far Voice, with an opportunity to potentially pick off the last hope of Mindset, but they do focus on each other to CVNT's luck and saving grace. If he can just stay alive a little bit longer, Far Voice is ensuing the push on Kite. This is an opportunity for Mindset to get a easy elim steal along with extra placement points as Kite makes his final stand, DBS in hand, in a sea of Far Voice. He's got Seiko. This could be the best opportunity for Kite to even the odds as Seiko approaches, honestly, not the best way. On his own, leaving his teammate behind. It's Kite's best odds of evening the fight. And yep, Seiko caught on fire, but able to secure it. Can he get a second takedown? It is not going to happen. And look at that. Mindset as a solo, biding his time, waiting for the right moment to strike. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is that. That is it. It's a wrap. Apologies for a little bit of misinformation on my end. Wrote it down a little incorrect, but this was it, ladies and gentlemen. This was the final stand to make here and now. And that was it. Mindset, complete shift of the tides, but will that actually be enough to move on to the play-ins? I would be kind of shocked, to be honest. I mean, 3 good matches is great, but, you know, out of 10, even with them being phenomenal performances, huge upsets, yes, definitely sending a message to the playing field, but is it enough? I don't think so. We're going to have a look at those overall standings as we move forward, but ladies and gentlemen, what an impressive round of PMES Community Series Finals France that we have had over the past 2 days. Just absolute bloodbath warfare. These participants laid everything out on the table. And one thing that we can say without a shadow of a doubt is, you know, there are just some phenomenal outlying teams here. You know, teams like Rafa, teams like Far Voice, teams like Oceans, who have definitely had their ups and downs, but there is an overall trend, an overall pattern that cannot be ignored, and just high elims, high placements consistently. It happens once, you can boil it down to luck. If it happens 9 times in a row, well, you're just dealing with a high synergy, high experience team. And if anything, there's never a way to improve better than up against the best. But here we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Mindset, 13-point gain from elims alone. First place finish. That's a 23-point gain to end round 5 with. Look at that damage dispersion here. Almost every one of them meeting the 4-digit marker. And look at this. Between CYNT and Jen, almost a total of 5,500 points just between, or 5,500 damage just between the two players themselves. Now, overall, here it is. Okay. That is going to be a tough one here for CKRS. Even on their good game, maintaining that momentum, it's still not undoing the efforts of the high ground holders, the high Kings of the Hill. Even on Rafa Esports' bad matches, it's still such a point lead that it will be a difficult shocker, a huge upset if Rafa is thrown off of that advancing bracket. But looky here. Top 5 elims. No surprise to see CYNT leading the bracket here with 9 elims and an extra 516 damage to spare. CKRS Shinra with 5 elims and 857 damage. It's a lot of phenomenal efforts overall. We see Kenny of Rafa alongside Wipe, alongside Keme. Even in their lower performing matches, 3 of the top 5 eliminators on the playing field are Rafa Esports. That is absolutely insane. Even on their bad games, they're the top eliminating team. But regardless, the results are in. The overall standings are here. And oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, I can't believe what I'm seeing. 104 points, a neck-and-neck finish. It all comes down to the decision factor of who had more chicken dinners. Luckily, I believe 2 slots advance on to the play-in, so if that is the case, I think they're both going to be thanking their lucky stars there because, ooh, there's nothing scarier to see than a dead even point tie in first and second. That's usually where it comes down to who has more chicken dinners. Or if they're tied at chicken dinners, then who had more elims. There's usually a critical factor that someone is going to get the gold and someone's going to get the silver. In this case, I believe it's 2 slots to the play-ins. So regardless, this has been an absolute honor and a pleasure to cast the Community Series Finals both days. I cannot wait to tune in to the play-ins come July 29th. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been Red Eyes Casting, and I hope to see you there, tuned in with me, supporting the teams, supporting these phenomenal PUBG Mobile esports players, supporting PUBG Mobile esports action in itself and mobile esports in general come July 29th. I'll see you, and until next time, I hope you all have a great night, have fun, be safe, and be kind to one another. GG's.